Hi friends, welcome to the channel. Today we're going to talk about the 3 mistakes every students make every year and how to avoid them. These techniques that I'm going to show you and the advice that I'm going to give you is something that I've used myself, going from someone who wasn't really doing good in school into someone who got 2 masters in engineering and in computer science. The number one mistake that students usually make is they overload themselves with theory. They think that reading papers and following the course and all the material that the professors give is what's going to make the difference. But usually that's not the case. If you don't apply what you learn, you end up just knowing a bunch of theory. And usually, since our memory is quite short, we end up only remembering up to 10% of what we read and learn. So over the years, we'll end up losing all the knowledge. So what's the point in studying if after that you end up losing everything? So I want you to switch your mindset of thinking of school and studies as just something temporary, that is just something to get good grades and to satisfy maybe your family and that's it, or getting high scores and that's it. That's really not enough, and that's not really how you should learn. And that's why I'm making this video. I want you to really understand that an information overload is not learning. The way you learn is by balancing information and a lot of action. I used to be the same before. I used to study a lot, like 80% of my time, focusing on theory, papers, and things like this, and only doing 20% of action, of doing the thing. Because I thought, okay, I need to practice a little bit so that I can pass my exams or whatever. At the end of the year or just the year after, I end up forgetting everything. And that's not the point. You know, when you're learning something and you're spending time into it, why don't you just do it right and remember it for a lifetime or minimum for years, you know? So my advice here would be to change the balance. Do 80% of doing the thing, of action, and 20% of theory. For example, if you're learning how to become a software developer, it's way better to focus your time on doing small projects and learning from them while doing than reading about how to create projects. It makes sense. If you study how to become a marketer, go and learn the tools the marketer use for ads campaign or for designing on Canva or Photoshop or whatever thing. There is always something that could be learned by doing instead of focusing too much on information. Number 2 is stop doing shallow work. So shallow work is the opposite of deep work, and deep work is a concept revolutionized by Cal Newport in his book called Deep Work. So what is deep work? It is a state of deep focus while tackling your biggest action of the day. So for example, if your main focus is studies, then you have a big chunk of time every day when you study. So what usually people do, they say, I will study in the morning, then they go and try and study in a coffee shop. Usually it could be loud, they could bring some friends, they have their phones active, they receive notifications, their computer is full of tabs of everything they've been watching, reading, social media, and they end up losing focus in all of these things. This is not deep work. This is the complete opposite. This is shallow work, when you have all the distractions around you and therefore you can't really focus. You end up spending long hours but getting just little benefit. So instead of doing shallow work, do deep work. And how can you do that? It's quite simple and straightforward. Remove your phone. Put it into airplane mode, remove the notifications, and put it in your bag or in another room. And that's done. That's first thing. Second thing, if you work on your computer, try to limit the tabs you use. Maybe just use 1 tab or 2 tabs or only the relevant tabs for your projects. No need to have everything open in front of you because you end up being distracted. Also, you could go to a quiet place, maybe to a library, to maybe go to your school's library, somewhere where it's quiet. If you like a little bit of movement, I do, for example, I can go to a coffee shop, put on my AirPods with the noise cancellation on, for example. Find what works for you and do deep work instead of shallow work. Number 3 is stop only relying on academical papers. Because when we're in school, everything we learn is theory and fundamentals and basics. And even though it's very important, but the real value comes from applying the things you learn. So yes, rely on academical papers while you're doing research, or if you're writing a dissertation or a paper yourself. It is important, obviously, to go through academical papers, but in real life, the only things that really matter is that you know how to apply those things. It's not knowing how to read them, obviously. It's not having just a bunch of things that are in your mind that you can't even remember. Because let's be honest, even after reading 10 papers, you only remember a few key ideas from them. So instead of spending all your time in academical papers, spend most of your time creating a portfolio, learning skills, or applying the things that you learn from academical papers. But don't just think that reading a few papers will make you an expert in anything. If your goal is becoming a lifelong researcher and being a researcher your whole life, maybe reading a bunch of articles and academical papers and books will be relevant for you. For the purpose of becoming great at what we do, whether we are marketers, journalists, developers, data scientists, computer scientists, coaches, whatever, we learn to apply. So always remember to apply more than what you learn, because theory is good until the point where you're saturated and you need to use it all in your application. I don't say don't focus on theory, because without a little bit of theory, you won't know from where to start. But you'd rather go and apply in real life situations and build a real portfolio, and you'll gain way more insights than just relying on theory. To summarize, too much theory isn't the best option. Go for a little bit of theory plus a lot of application. You will learn loads and loads and loads of information while doing the thing instead of just reading about it. Number 2 is go from shallow work into deep work. And for that to happen, you have to remove your phone, remove your notifications, have a few tabs if you're using your computer. If you're working in a desk, try to make it minimalistic. You don't need thousands of things around. Tell your family or friends that you need some hours to focus, and then you'll see a massive difference, especially over the days and over the weeks. Because this is not a magic formula. It's not after doing one deep work session that everything will change, but you'll see massive differences in your productivity over the weeks and over the months. And it's something that you're going to apply even after your studies, in work, in personal projects, in business. This is something that is so relevant in all the fields. So deep work instead of shallow work. And number 3, final point, is stop relying on academical papers. They are relevant until a certain point, but only reading academical papers, 80% of their content is just fluff. Usually they just try to make things longer. A lot of theory in there. It's usually written for other academics, so professors or people who study for masters and PhDs. And usually from my experience, I got 2 masters, and yes, I've read so many academical papers for the purpose of writing my own dissertation, but I promise you that I don't remember much from them. I know how to read them, I know how to reference, but after university, usually you never write academical dissertations. It's just something that you do in school, which is nice, but the things that are really relevant is to build projects, is to build portfolios, is to really do the things you learn, and not just learn it by reading a bunch of papers and then forgetting about them 6 months later. And here we are. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like and a subscribe. It really does help the channel. And if you have any suggestions, just put them on the comments and I'll add them to my list of future videos. And thank you for the support. I'll see you in the next video.